leadership while embedding China more deeply into the fabric of global tech infrastructure.
There's always like a point where open source can stop being open source too, right? So the licenses are very favorable today, but if
Could close it.
exactly, if over time, they can always change the license. So it's important that we actually have people here in America building, and that's why Meta is so important.
Another consequence of China's AI breakthrough is giving its Communist Party control of the narrative. AI models built in China, they're forced to adhere to a certain set of rules set by the state. They must embody core socialist values. Studies have shown that models created by Tencent and Alibaba, they will censor historical events like Tiananmen Square, deny human rights abuse, and filter criticism of Chinese political leaders.
That contest is about whether we're going to have democratic AI informed by democratic values built to serve democratic purposes, or we're going to end up with autocratic AI.
If developers really begin to adopt these models en masse because they're more efficient, that could have a serious ripple effect, trickle down to even consumer-facing AI applications, and influence how trustworthy those AI-generated responses from chatbots really are.
And there's really only two countries right now in the world that can build this at scale, and that is the U.S. And China. And so, the consequences, the stakes in and around this are just enormous.
Enormous stakes, enormous consequences, and hanging in the balance, America's lead. For a topic so complex and new, we turn to an expert who's actually building in the space and model agnostic. Perplexity co-founder and CEO Arvind Srinivas, who you heard from throughout our piece, he sat down with me for more than 30 minutes to discuss Deepseek and its implications, as well as Perplexity's roadmap. We think it's worth listening to that whole conversation, so here it is. So first, I want to know what the stakes are. Describe the AI race between China and the US and what's at stake.
Okay, so first of all, China has a lot of disadvantages in competing with the US. Number one is the fact that they don't get access to all the hardware that we have access to here. So they're kind of working with lower end GPUs than us. It's almost like working with the previous generation GPUs scrappily. And the fact that the bigger models tend to be more smarter naturally puts them at disadvantage. But the flip side of this is that necessity is the mother of invention. Because they had to go figure out workarounds, they actually ended up building something a lot more efficient. It's like saying, hey, look, you guys really got to get a top-notch model, and I'm not going to give you resources, and like figure out something, right? Unless it's mathematically possible to prove that it's impossible to do so, you can always try to come up with something more efficient. But that is likely to make them come up with a more efficient solution than America. And of course, they have open source it, so we can still adopt something like that here. But that kind of talent they're building to do that will become an edge for them over time, right? The leading open source model in America is Meta's Llama family. It's really good. It's kind of like a model that you can run on your computer. But even though it got pretty close to GPT-4 and Sonnet at the time of its release, the model that was closest in quality was the giant 405B, not the 70B that you could run on your computer. And so there was still not a small, cheap, fast, efficient open source model that rivaled the most powerful closed models from OpenAI and Anthropic. Nothing from America, nothing from Mistral AI either. And then these guys come out with like a crazy model that's like 10x cheaper in API pricing than GPT-4o and 15x cheaper than Sonnet, I believe.